Imagine this. A pastor is leading a Sunday service, live streaming it to his congregation, when suddenly armed robbers burst in, right there, in the middle of the sermon, in front of everyone. The whole thing gets caught on camera. The video goes viral, hundreds of thousands of views, and people start splitting into two camps. Some feel bad for the guy, and others are like, hold up. Why does a pastor even have $1 million worth of jewelry? This is a pastor named Lamor Whitehead. Journalists called him the Bling Bishop. And no, that's not a nickname he gave himself. It's what he earned, thanks to his love for luxury. Lamor preached about humility while wearing Gucci suits, a gold chain around his neck, a Rolex on his wrist, and with a Rolls-Royce parked in the garage of his lavish mansion. Curious how he made all that money? Stick around. Before he found religion, he wasn't standing at an altar or studying at seminary. He called himself a real estate agent. At least that's what he told people. He also claimed to be a lawyer, an investor, even a human rights activist. But none of that brought in the kind of money he wanted. So one day, back in 2004, Lamor made a decision. Enough of this modest life. It's time to get rich. How exactly did he plan to pull it off? Let me walk you through it. Here's the deal. Lamor had a girlfriend who worked at a car dealership. She had access to sensitive customer information, credit histories, financial statements, all of it. One day, Lamor quietly got hold of her work login and password, sat down at his computer, and logged into the system. Once he had access, he started applying for loans and opening credit lines, but not under his own name. He used the names of unsuspecting clients. And he didn't save the money, he spent it on flashy cars, designer clothes, jewelry. Even bought himself a motorcycle, actually more than one. Back then, he had a dream, to look like a movie star from a 50 Cent music video. And he made it happen. This wasn't just about a couple of forged applications. Number over 50 people were affected by his scheme. People who had no idea they were part of someone else's plan to strike it rich. The total losses, rumor has it, over $2 million. Of course, a scam like this doesn't stay hidden for long. Victims started noticing. Banks flagged suspicious activity. Law enforcement stepped in. Eventually, Lamor was arrested. In 2008, Lamor Whitehead was officially convicted. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and he served every day of it. By 2013, he was out. It seemed like he had turned a new leaf. Calmer, more focused, maybe even reformed. But that was only on the surface. Because during those years behind bars, something started to take shape. Maybe it was in his cell, maybe it came later. But at some point, Lamor realized something. You can make serious money preaching too. And that's where Act 2 begins, the most scandalous part of the story. After getting out, he started fresh. Picture this. A former inmate returns and says, I'm going to be a pastor. But not just any pastor, one you won't forget. He founded his own church, Leaders of Tomorrow International Ministries, in Brooklyn. It looked like a cross between a startup and a record label. Stage lights, Gucci suits, Bentleys, luxury watches worth tens of thousands, and of course, live streams. Lots of live streams. His sermons felt more like motivational speeches with a designer twist. Less about love for thy neighbor, more about how God wants you to be successful and well-dressed. He didn't hide his wealth. Quite the opposite. He flaunted it. And let's be real, people love a show. And his show started pulling in viewers, among them some very trusting parishioners. One of them was a 56-year-old retired nurse. She trusted the pastor and gave him $90,000 of her savings. He promised to help her buy a house, then disappeared. The money didn't go toward real estate. It went toward designer suits, a BMW, and glittery accessories. But it didn't stop there. While some people were praying, he was still collecting money from his congregation, or, more accurately, stealing it. Whitehead drove a Rolls-Royce Cullinan, another one, a Rolls-Royce Ghost, sat in his garage. Combined, they were worth over $700,000. His mansion in New Jersey? Over 9,000 square feet. A place where the marble floors echoed more than any sermon. Meanwhile, his Instagram following exploded. first thousands, then tens of thousands, until he hit 1.3 million followers. He became a celebrity preacher with videos, filters, and slow-motion glam shots. And when you gain millions of followers, celebrities start showing up. Whitehead was seen in photos with rappers, athletes, actors. Among them, Fat Joe, Phoebe O'Foran, Foxy Brown, Tracy Morgan, and even New York City Mayor Eric Adams. He was showing up at events where a single ticket cost more than what some of his parishioners made in 3 months. But that wasn't even the most dramatic part. In July 2022, Whitehead was in the middle of a sermon. It was being live-streamed. Suddenly, 3 masked men burst in. A robbery, live, on camera. They took his jewelry. The total value? Over $1 million. His Rolex watch alone was worth $75,000. One of his chains? $400,000, all taken in front of a stunned congregation. The police later caught the robbers, but the video went viral. Because let's face it, a bishop being robbed mid-sermon? That's headline material. And that's when America split in opinion. Some people felt bad for him. Others asked, why does a pastor have $1 million in jewelry? That attention brought scrutiny, and scrutiny led to investigations. The FBI started digging into his finances, and they found more than just fancy cars. That nurse wasn't the only person who gave him money, and not the only promise he broke. One case would become crucial in his eventual arrest. It involved $500,000. In 2022, a businessman named Paolo Arellano approached Whitehead. Paolo was a military veteran trying to break into real estate development in New York. Whitehead told him he had direct access to the mayor of New York, Eric Adams. And if Paolo wanted city support, well, that would require a little motivation. A little, meaning $500,000. Whitehead promised he could pull strings, get approvals, push deals through, claimed the mayor was like a brother to him. Paolo agreed, but wisely also contacted the FBI. That's when things got really interesting. The FBI launched a full operation. Paolo wore a wire. Whitehead had no clue his every word was being recorded. On tape, he asked for money, guaranteed access, and even suggested managing the process for a small bonus. That small bonus? Another $100,000. But spoiler alert, he had zero real influence. The mayor's office later confirmed that Whitehead had no official or unofficial ties to city leadership. And that's not all. Whitehead also applied for a $250,000 loan, inflating his income, faking bank statements, and claiming to own $1 million company. That's bank fraud. At the same time, he lied to federal agents, saying he didn't own phones that were clearly in his possession. All of this led to a massive trial. In 2024, Lamor Whitehead was found guilty on multiple counts: fraud, attempted extortion, and making false statements. Prosecutors proved this wasn't a mistake. It was a long-running scheme, crafted and executed with intention. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison. As he walked out of court, he was still smiling, still confident. He even said, "You haven't heard the last of me." And he filed an appeal. But honestly, doesn't this feel familiar? Every era seems to have someone who turns religion into business, someone who speaks beautifully, while quietly building their mansion on trust. The story of Lamor Whitehead isn't just a scandal, it's a mirror, one that reflects how words can become currency and faith a tool. So next time you see someone preaching from a Bentley, maybe ask yourself, who's footing the bill? Because sometimes the price is your $90,000. Enjoyed this story? Leave a like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next one. Now you know.